Very good afternoon to all. This is our first presentation, and my name is Bhavyata Kukadia, and my topic name is the Wasteland as a pandemic poem. Here is my personal information, points to ponder upon. Author introduction. The Wasteland is written by a famous writer of English literature, Thomas Streams Eliot, T.S. Eliot, was a British American poet, playwright, and literary critic. He, he worked as a teacher, banker, and a clerk while pursuing his literary career. Eliot's poetry is known for its complexity and elusiveness, drawing on a wide range of literary and cultural tradition, including the Bible, classical mythology, and the works of Dante, Shakespeare, and John Donne. Here is some his famous works. Eliot was also influential literary critic, writing groundbreaking essays on poetry and culture, including tradition and the individual talent, the function of criticism, and Hamlet and his problems. He was a major force in the development of modernist literature and helped to establish the reputation of several important writers, including Ezra Pound, W.B. Yeats, and James Joyce. Eliot was also influential literary critic, writing groundbreaking essays on poetry and culture, including tradition and individual talent. Eliot was awarded the Nobel Prize in literature in recognition of his outstanding contribution to poetry and literary criticism. He died in London on January 4, 1965, and was buried in the churchyard of St. Michel's Church, East Coker, Somerset, England. His legacy continues to influence and inspire poets and readers around the world. Exploring the Wasteland. The Wasteland is a poem that speaks to the human experience of pandemic. The poem is written in the early 1920s. The poem is filled with imagery and death and destruction, but also of hope and renewal. As we look to the poem through the lens of pandemic, we can see how the poem is reflection of our current situation. We can connect this the Westland with the present pandemic COVID-19. The poem conveys the message that when facing a crisis, we must draw on our past experiences, both success and failures, and use the wisdom we have gained to build a better future. It also promotes uh, uh, re, resilience and encourages us to use hope, faith, and love to preserve and make a difference. We should strive for justice, peace, and harmony, and remember our interconnectedness, the power of poetry. The Westland is a portrayal of a world in which meaning have been lost. The poem is filled with images of isolation, uh, empty decays, which could be seen as reflecting the feeling of many pandemic. Eliot's, Eliot's description of the buried wasteland, what tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief. Eliot also suggests that poetry has the power to redeem and revive spirit. In the final section of the poem, the Fisher King is restored. This is the redemption suggests that poetry has the power of transcendent and the language and the communicate directly with the soul. Themes of renewal and rebirth. The Wasteland is a poem of renewal and rebirth. In the poem, Eliot speaks of a world that has been destroyed, but also of a world that can be reborn. The poem speaks to the idea that in times of crisis, we must look to the past in order to move forward. We must remember the lesson we have learned in this learn and strive to build a better future. The poem also speaks to the idea of hope and the power of human spirit to overcome id- adver- adversity in times of despair. The poem reminds us that we are not alone. The poem is a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the power of resilience. The Westland is as a pandemic poem. The poem, The Wasteland, is a powerful illustration of the fragility of life and the need for determination of difficulty. Composed in the early 1920s, it is filled with images of death and devastation, yet also of optimism and revival. When viewed through the perspective of the pandemic, we can see how the poem mirrors our current plights. In the first line of the poem Westland, this is a very famous line of the poem. April is the cruelest month. In the context of the poem, this line refers to the way in which the coming of spring can bring a renewed feeling of hopelessness and despair. And in the context of the pandemic, this line takes on new meaning as April 2022. Sorry, here is a some mistake. 2020 was the month when many countries around the world began to see a surge in COVID 19 cases and death. This is line from Westland. We can connect with our present situation during COVID 19 pandemic. Unreal city. This line refers to the feeling of disconnection and isolation. The situation of like this many people experience in the aftermath of World War I. In present time of COVID-19, we can connect this line, uh, 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 context it, meaning some situation we can feel this when we stay in the home, like the situation of World War I. The second line is I had not thought that and undone so many. This line refers to the sheer number of people who died in World War I and the damaging impact in the society. In this line we can refer the situation, connect this situation during pandemic. We can say and isolate ourselves to the home, and we don't meet to our lovable person and family, and we have to live in our home and isolate on self. The river is a tent is broken. uh, rivers the river stand is broken. This line refers to the way in which nature is in state of decay and decline. Conclusion: the poem is highlights the power of poetry in times of crisis. The poem is reflection of the disconnection and fragmentation that Eliot saw in society at the time. It is a powerful example of how poetry can be used to address social issue and provide a voice for those who are struggling to make sense of their experience. The West End is a powerful example of how poetry can be used to address social issue and provides a voice for those who are struggling to make sense of their experience. Through its use of symbolism, language, and structure, the poem speaks to the complex emotional and psychological struggles that people face in times of crisis and provides a space for readers to engage with this issue in a meaningful way. Here is a work citation. If you have any question, you can ask.
Viveka, my question is, what are some examples of how the wasteland poem related to the pandemic? Loudly, then your camera, then laptop will capture your voice. What are some examples of how the wasteland poem related to the pandemic?
Some scholars have pointed to the poems references to sickness and disease, such as the lines in the wasteland. I will show you fear in handful of dust, and this, one more line is the image of the heap of broken images. These two and many other lines can also be seen as a metaphor for the fractured and fragmented experience of living through a pandemic. Any
Viveka, what pandemic is there in reference of the poem The Wasteland?
uh, in the Westland, which was written by T.S. Eliot, there is a no specific pandemic mention in this poem. The poem was written in 1922, as I mentioned in my slide. Uh, in that several years before the outbreaks of a major pandemic such as the Spanish flu, which was during 1980 to 1990, and the COVID-19 pandemic in our present 2019. Thank you.